living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
It's often called one of the most important organs and serves as the hub for controlling and coordinating the body's functions. We're talking about the brain this morning and how it changes with age, how medications can impact the way it functions, and common problems and diseases that affect it as we get older. I'm your host, Beth Brown. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our first guest is Diana Lurie from the University of Montana, who is here with us today to talk about some brain basics and what can commonly happen to the brain as we get older. Thanks so much for being here today, Diana.
It's a pleasure being here.
Can you just start out a little bit by just saying what you do at the University of Montana and what your specialty is?
Sure. I am a professor in the School of Pharmacy at the University of Montana, and so I teach anatomy and physiology to pharmacy students. I am a neuroscientist, so I've spent my life studying the brain.
Awesome.
I also do a lot of integrative medicine and traditional systems of medicine. And my research lab looks at inflammation in the brain and how that affects our functions after injury, after depression, anxiety.
Okay, great. So can you give us just a basic overview of what it is the brain does and how it does control a lot of our functions?
Exactly. So the brain is really our interface between the outside world and our internal world. So the brain takes all the signals in your external world, what you hear, what you see, what you touch, and it interprets that information and allows you to move your muscles so that you can navigate through the world. The other thing that the brain does is it monitors your internal world. So it's taking care of your heart rate, your respiration, your digestion, all the things that you don't think about on a daily basis but happen in your body. So it's the master regulator.
Okay, great. And as we age, our brain changes, and some of that is normal, right? Can you just talk about what can be expected or what's common as we age?
Absolutely. So as we age, our brain begins to shrink a little bit, and we begin to lose some of our memory a little bit. You know, we might forget where we put something, or you have to keep lists to remember everything. And that's perfectly normal. That's just normal aging.
Okay. And I know a term that people have heard a lot, cognitive decline. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so cognitive decline means that the general function of your brain isn't quite as sharp as it was when you were, say, in your 20s. So you might have some issues with memory. It might take you longer to perform everyday tasks. You might forget words. Just small little changes in general, just kind of slowing down the functions of your thinking.
Okay, so that phrase doesn't have to be scary. It's
not
pretty
at
common.
all,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay, perfect. And is there a certain age when people can start to expect to see some of that cognitive decline, or is it different for everyone?
That's an excellent question. And that gets to the point of we have two ways that we think about time. So time is chronological, the minutes, the hours, the days. And then there's biological time, which is how your body actually ages. So everybody's biological aging is going to be a little bit different. But in general, we start to begin to see some of these maybe memory issues, some of this cognitive decline around the age of 40.
Okay. And you mentioned that the brain shrinks.
Yes.
Why does that happen?
It happens because the cells get tired, they get old, and some of them begin to die. So we have two types of cells in our brain. We have our cell bodies, that is composed of what we call gray matter. And then we have the processes that those cells use to communicate with each other. And they're like roadways through the brain, and those are called white matter. So you've got clusters of cell bodies, and then you have pathways that information flows around. And both those clusters of cell bodies and those pathways begin to shrink around the age of 40.
Okay. And so is that tied to cognitive decline then, or is there different factors at play there?
No, that's definitely tied. That's one of the factors in cognitive decline, that your brain is shrinking a little bit. You also have chemicals in your brain called neurotransmitter that your brain cells use to communicate with each other. And we see a decrease in those levels of those chemicals that the brain cells use to communicate with each other. So you have kind of a physical decrease, and then you have a chemical decrease in your neurotransmitters.
Okay, and part of that you mentioned earlier is memory loss. We have to start writing some things down. How normal is it to experience some memory loss, and is it okay or something to be concerned about?
You know, we all experience memory loss as we age, and that's perfectly normal. It's perfectly part of the aging process. You have to start being concerned about it when it really begins to interfere with your activities of daily living. So your work or your social life, if it really gets to the point where it's interfering in a large way with your life, then that's something to address.
And can you talk a little bit about the physiology behind that too? What is exactly happening in your brain that makes you start to forget things?
Well, that is related to the shrinkage that we see in the brain. And we have an area of the brain called the hippocampus, which is part of our memory. It helps to consolidate memories, it helps us retrieve memories. And that is one of the areas of the brain in particular that shrinks during aging. So not the whole brain doesn't shrink, but regions of it do. Okay. So the hippocampus shrinks, the front of the brain, the forebrain shrinks also, and that has to do with our decision making. But interestingly, the back of the brain, where we code our visual information, that doesn't get touched at all, that stays fine.
Okay, so that's why we see changes in memory, but not in some of the other functions of the brain. Okay,
Exactly.
Perfect. So we're going to pause there. We do need to take a quick break, but Diana is going to stick around to talk about some common problems and diseases that happen to our brains when we age. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.